All right, commissioners, happy Monday. We'll go over the agenda here real quick. We've got minutes to approve from June 7th and June 14th. We've got 2 time extensions for letter A and letter B. Both should be approved on consent. Those aren't public hearing items. Letter C is a subdivision for a preliminary plat for 10 buildable lots on Mountain View Drive. We do have some neighborhood opposition that we received, so we will be hearing this one tonight. Number 1 is an appeal of the Design Review Committee's approval for a new building downtown. The site was not posted, so we are actually, this is an outdated script, sorry. We're actually going to ask for deferral to September 13th.
Sorry, what was that date?
September 13th.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Speak up over there, young lady.
Sorry. So we will not be hearing that one tonight, just deferral to September 13th. Number 2, PUD 21-19 and CVA 21-27 at 1805 Overland. It's a PUD for 12 units and a variance, couple variances. We are recommending approval, but there is some neighborhood opposition, so we will hear that one. Number 3, CUP 21-12, CUP for a childcare center on Vanell Way. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we will try for consent. Number 4, CAR 21-17, PUD 21-18, sub 21-24, rezone PUD and subdivision on Shamrock Street. We are recommending approval and we can try for consent. So we're not aware of any opposition. Number 5, CUP 21-30 is a parking reduction on Barber Valley Drive for a proposed athletic facility. We are recommending approval, but there is neighborhood opposition, so we'll hear that one. Number 6, PUD 21-22 is a PUD for a single family home and a duplex on Garnett Street, excuse me. We are recommending approval. There is some neighborhood opposition that we received late after the late correspondence deadline, but we will be hearing that one this evening. And I'll go through the rest, but I believe the rest we can try all for consent because we're not aware of any opposition. Number 7, PUD 21-21 and sub 21-25 on Franklin Road is a PUD for 8 single family homes in a preliminary plat subdivision. We are recommending approval. Number 8, CVA 21-25 is a variance for 2 freestanding signs at Pierce Park Elementary. We are recommending approval. Number 9, CUP 21-29 is an increase to existing child care center on Idaho Street. We are recommending approval. Number 10, we're requesting deferral to August 2nd for a variance on 17th Street. Number 11, CVA 21-26, variance on 8th Street. We are recommending approval, and I believe some commissioners wanted to speak on that before we approve the agenda or consent agenda tonight. So Commissioner Danley, is that correct? Okay. And then number 12, PUD 21-20 is a PUD for 76 units on Cole Road. We are recommending approval, so we can try for consent. Did you get all that? So we've got 2 deferrals, 2 time extensions, and then we will be hearing C, 2, 5, and 6. Any questions? Okay. Got a 10-minute break.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone attending the public hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. It is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant, then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony with those who are in person, then who've signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. And finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Celine. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few moments ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Dunn,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Blanchard,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here.
Hanley,
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
Okay, before we build the consent agenda, we have a couple requests for deferral. So we're going to start with that. The first deferral request is item number 1. This is DRH 21-144 for Better Change for East Downtown. Requesting deferral to September 13th, 2021 at 200 North 4th Street. This is an appeal to the Design Review Committee's approval of a new 13-story mixed-use building. So is there anybody present wanting to testify on this item tonight that could not return to the September 13th, 2021 date? Please virtually raise your hand or do so here in person. Okay,
Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
would you like a motion?
Sure.
I move that we defer item 1 DRH 21-144 to this, can you give me
September 13th, 2021.
till the September 13th, 2021 meeting?
Second.
Great. We have a second from Commissioner Schaefer. If there is no discussion, then will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Hanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. The next item requesting deferral is item number 10. This is CVA 21-21 for Michaela Todd, requesting deferral to August 2nd, 2021 at 715 North 17th Street. This is a variance to encroach into the rear yard setback for an expansion of an existing accessory structure. Is there anybody present that would like to testify on this item that could not return to the August 2nd, 2021 date? Please virtually raise your hand or in person here. Okay, seeing no hands, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to defer item 10 to the August 2nd hearing.
Second. We have a second from Commissioner Moore. And if there is no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Hanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So item A, PUD 19-19 and CBA 19-24 for professional engineering services is a time extension to August 5th, 2023, and we will place that on the consent agenda. This is not a public hearing item. That was a request for a 2-year time extension on a conditional use permit for a planned residential development. Item letter B is also requesting, or is also time extension, PUD 19-17 for Ethan Helmer at 5571 North Eagle Road. This is a request for a 2-year time extension for a planned residential development comprised of 46 multifamily units. And so that is to September 17th, 2023, and that will also be placed on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration of the consent agenda is Commissioner Schaefer.
Do we want to maybe add the minutes from
Thank
June
you.
7th and 14th?
Thank you. I will also love to add the minutes to the consent agenda for June 7th, 2021, and also the minutes for June 14th, 2021. Next item for consideration is item number 3. This is CUP 21-12 for Kids in Rhythm. This is at 1471 South Vanille Way, a conditional use permit for a child care center for 20 children on 0.64 acres. Is the applicant present? If you're online, please virtually raise your hand. Okay. I don't see that the applicant is present. Is there anybody here that would like to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or in person here. Okay, seeing none, we will place item number 1 on the, or I'm sorry, item number 3 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 4. This is CAR 21-17, PUD 21-18, and SUB 21-24 at 911 North Shamrock Street for Rodney Evans and Partners. This is a rezone of 3.25 acres, a conditional use permit for planned residential development, and a preliminary and final plat for residential subdivision. Is the applicant present? Great. I see Mr. Semple online. And Mr. Semple, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Great. Do we have anybody in attendance tonight that would like to testify in opposition of item number 4? Please virtually raise your hand or do so here in person. Okay, seeing none, then item 4 will be placed on the consent agenda. Next item is item number 7. This is PUD 21-21 for South Beck and Baird at 10805 West Franklin Road, a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 8 attached single-family homes. And also SUB 21-25 for Franklin Townhomes at 10805 West Franklin Road, a preliminary plat for residential subdivision. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Let the record show that they are. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to testify in opposition of this item? Please virtually raise your hand or in person. I'm still warming up to having people back in person. Okay, great. Then item 7 will be, seeing none, item 7 will be placed on the consent agenda. The next item is item number 8. This is CVA 21-25 for Image National at 5015 North Pierce Park Lane, a variance to install 2 freestanding signs. Is the applicant present? Great, I see a hand up. And Ms. Baum, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
We are.
Great. And is there anybody present that would like to speak in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then item 7 will be placed on the consent agenda. I'm sorry, item 8. will be placed on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 9. This is CUP 21-29 for Le Soleil Childcare LLC at 302 West Idaho Street, a modification to a previously approved conditional use permit to expand a childcare center to 43 children. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with terms and conditions of the staff report? Let the record show that they are. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to testify in opposition of item number 9 tonight? Okay, seeing none, then item 9 will be placed on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 11. This is CVA 21-26 for Erstad Architects at 777 South 8th Street, a variance to encroach onto the street side setbacks. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Let the record show that they are. And is there anybody in attendance that would like to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please raise your hand. Just to clarify, I did have a couple signups, but I just wanted to confirm that those are not in opposition of the item. For Carlene Davis and Courtney. Okay, seeing no hands, then we will place item 11 on the consent agenda.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
I'll need to recuse myself from item 11 CVA 21-26 as my family has a business relationship with Erstad Architects.
Thank you. Okay, the next item for consideration of the consent agenda is item number 12. This is PUD 21-20 for ALC Architecture at 709 North Cole Road, a conditional use permit for planned residential development comprised of 76 multifamily units. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Let the record show that they are. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to testify in opposition of item number 12 tonight? Okay, seeing none, then item 12 will be placed on the consent agenda and the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to approve the following items on the consent agenda. Meeting minutes from June 7th and June 14th. Items A, B, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Danley. Did you want to add
Just a brief comment.
before we vote? Yeah, go for it.
So, Madam Chair, it's important to recognize and celebrate the positive things. I firmly believe that. We hear a lot of negativity in the last year. It's been a tough road in certain instances, locally, nationwide, et cetera. And one of our particular items, item number 11, I hope I pronounce this correct. Is it the Wasmuth? Yes. All right. The Wasmuth Center for Human Rights that's going to be co-located with the Anne Frank Human Rights Memorial. I think that's a pretty big deal. I think that's a pretty amazing achievement. And I'm sure it took many, many years to actually come to fruition. A lot of fundraising, a lot of time and energy and frustration, but it's here, it's moving forward. And it's something I think that we should take the minute just to celebrate and recognize as a really wonderful thing to add to this great city of Boise. It's as simple as that.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Danley. So we have a motion from Commissioner Schaefer and a second from Commissioner Danley to approve the consent agenda. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Zed,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Hi,
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, so the first item up for hearing is item C. This is SUB 21-23 for Kawano Estate Subdivision at 4601 North Mountain View Drive, a preliminary plat for residential subdivision comprised of 10 buildable lots. Can I double check, I guess, that the applicant is present? Do we know that the applicant is here? This is Dan Lardy Levitt and Associates. Please virtually raise your hand if you are online or come on up if you're in person. Oh, great. Okay, you'll be up next. Thank you so much. So first we'll start with staff. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Before you is a request for a preliminary plat for the Quanah Estates subdivision. The subject parcel is 1.188 acres located at 4601 North Mountain View Drive in an R1C zone. The applicant requests a preliminary plat for 10 buildable lots that range in size from approximately 5,000 square feet to 7,600 square feet. Access to the subdivision includes a new private street north tax place. As proposed, the subdivision complies with the density requirements of the R1C zone. The subdivision will be compatible with the surrounding area as the proposed lots will be similar in size to the surrounding properties. Late correspondence was received detailing concerns regarding preservation of a mature tree along the eastern boundary and also preservation and concerns regarding the use and location of irrigation lines on the site. Planning staff does recommend approval with conditions, and the motion needed tonight is a recommendation to City Council. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, we'll ask to hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Madam Chair, Dan Lardy, Levin Associates, 1324 First Street South, Nampa, 83651. I did pick the farthest chair, I think, almost to make my way up, make an entrance. So this evening, do you have a PowerPoint? Thank you. It's a really brief PowerPoint, and I don't want to restate a bunch of stuff that Delaney already stated. So next slide, please. So it is currently zoned R1C. Surrounding a residential property is the same zoning, re-subdivision of lots 6 and 7 of Valley View Heights, and it is approximately 1.8 acres. Proposed subdivision 10 lots. Density comes out to be 5.4 lots per acre. So this is the site. This is an aerial view of the site. You can see the tree near Cedarview Lane. It's actually not near Cedarview Lane. I don't have a pointer. I'm sorry. Do you know where the tree is?
Right, I don't know if you see my.
Yep, that's perfect. That's the tree in question. There, and there's a nice front picture of it, a little bit older. Okay, next slide, please. So this existing tree, the neighbor registered their concern that it might be damaged during construction, and there's a good chance that it may be. And they would like the gravity irrigation line repaired or abandoned in place. The existing tree is approximately 50 years old, so it does have some historic value. Mr. Quano enjoys that tree, the owner of the property. He enjoys that tree and has enjoyed that tree. Spoke to a landscape architect, and the arborists do believe that it can be pruned at the boundary and be saved. Mr. Quano is also willing to work with the neighbor. He's actually had several discussions since he's been neighbors with these folks for a long time. He's had discussions with them about trying to save the tree, and he's willing to work with them within reason, without subgoing or foregoing his private property rights. He understands the tree is valuable and it is important and it can be pruned. And then the gravity irrigation line upon development will be abandoned in place. And he is the last user on that particular run. All it does is come around and water his front half of his yard. Oh, there's another picture of the tree, and there's a preliminary plat. And so hopefully we get your approval tonight. Thank you. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, I'll just check to see if we have a representative from the Glenwood Rim Neighborhood Association online with us or in person. Okay, seeing none, then we will move to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
question for the applicant. So the tree in question, as I understand it, or let me ask it as a question, is the tree in fact on this neighbor's property?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, the tree itself is actually on the neighbor's property and it's a little ways in. It's about 10 feet onto their property. So the root base actually does spread out across the boundary, and so do some of the upper limbs.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So my understanding is, according to city code, this would not be considered a boundary tree where there's any kind of shared ownership or shared responsibilities. Is that correct as far as you understand it?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that would be correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions. We will next move, thank you. We'll move to the public testimony
Thank you,
now.
Madam Chair, Commissioners.
So do we have anybody that would like to testify on this item tonight? I have a couple people signed up. I'll call them if I have to. If you're online and would like to testify, please virtually raise your hand. Great, let's start with Fred Ornelas. Just give us a minute, please, Fred, while we switch you over to a speaking permission. Okay, Fred, please unmute and then start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name's Fred Ornelas. I'm here with my wife Judy. Our address is 4523 Mountain View Drive, and we are the adjacent property to the northeast of Mr. Kawano's property, and it's our tree. We've spoken with Casey about it. We're kind of amenable, but this is an old tree and it's encroached on both properties for its nourishment. And we would just like to see it preserved, particularly through the construction phase. That's our primary concern. Now, we are going to have it pruned and this fall, and we will work with Casey to kind of accommodate him as we can. So we want some protection, I guess, from the construction perspective of that root, the root ball underneath it. We've had an arborist look at it and make some suggestions that we've already presented to Mr. Kawano. And then with respect to the irrigation line, if that line is to be abandoned with new irrigation supplied, is there any chance that it can be terminated more or less at the source? Because it runs through our entire community here, and it would be nice if it was gone, not ripped out, but turned off. Well, I don't know where it went.
Hit launch meeting and see what happens. I don't know.
Are you still there, Mr. Ornelas?
I don't know. I'm looking at my computer now, not at you guys.
We can still hear you, so if you have more to say, you're welcome to say it.
I think that's it, although the designation of the property has changed, and our letter referred to lots, us being adjacent to lots 10 and 11, and the numbers currently are 9 and 10. And that's pretty much it. We would just like some protection in order to preserve this tree.
Thank you, Mr. Ornelas. Would Judith like her own time to speak, or are you finished?
We're finished. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Great. Is there anybody else that would like to testify on this item tonight? Please raise your hand or virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to a rebuttal by the applicant. You'll have 5 minutes for this, but please start again with your name for the record.
Madam Chair, Dan Lardy, Levin Associates, 1324 First Street South, Nampa, 83651. I just want to say that I believe we're in agreement with the Ornelas. So that's all I need to say. I think we're in agreement. So I think that's good. Look forward to your approval tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to approve SUB 21-23 with all the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Blanchard. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'll be quick. I think the layout here, the pre-plat looks good. I'm sorry, it's a recommendation for approval. to
Thank
council.
you.
I think I may have misstated
Yep, thank you.
that. So recommendation for approval to council. Density, aligns well with surrounding neighborhood. It meets all of the requirements for the zone. All supporting agencies are in agreement as proposed. And then as a side note, I want to commend the applicant and the neighbors for speaking and working together collectively to come to an agreement and a plan of action regarding the tree in question. It sounds like the tree is not necessarily, on the boundary per se, but we've had similar projects in the past where we've had applicants and neighbors not communicating, and it just creates difficulty moving forward. So again, I want to commend everyone for working together cooperatively to resolve any confusion and make this a good project.
Great. Okay, so we have before us a motion to recommend approval for SUB 21-23 at 4601 North Mountain View Drive. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Stanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Bless you. The next, I forgot I was on a mic. Whispering doesn't help. The next item is item number 2. This is PUD 21-19 for Trout Architects chartered at 1805 West Overland Road for a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 12 multifamily units. And also CVA 21-27, a variance to encroach on the side yard setback. We'll start with staff. Please again, Ms. Garlick.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the commission. Before you is a request for a conditional use permit for residential plan development as well as a variance. The project site is 0.3 acres located at 1805 West Overland Road in a limited office with design review zone. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 3-story, 12-unit multifamily apartment. A variance is requested along the south side setback, which would be for the proposed service drive as well as the trash enclosure. Site improvements include a service drive from South Annette Street, which provides internal circulation and access to 13 off-street parking spaces. The applicant is providing a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk with an 8-foot wide landscape strip with curb and gutter along South Annette Street. These improvements will require removal of existing street trees. However, efforts are being made to preserve an existing mature elm tree by modifying the curb and gutter to allow for the tree trunk and roots at this particular location. The project site will include perimeter landscaping, open space areas, as well as individual patios and balconies. Each unit is 1 to 2 bedrooms, provides a patio and balcony with the maximum height of the proposed apartment complex at 33.6 feet, which is under the maximum allowed height of 45 feet in the LO zone. Public comments were received. These were from neighbors and detailed concerns regarding parking, fire hydrant accessibility, removal of street trees, and irrigation canal access. Planning staff recommends approval with conditions, and the motion needed is a final decision for the PUD and variance. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Garlick. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes. If you both want to speak, no problem. Just go ahead and start again with your name and address and your name again if you switch back.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Steve Trout Architects Chartered. Our address is 2504 West Kootenai, 83705. I'm here representing the family of Brian Schuler. And then joining me tonight, we have Lisa Schuler, Brian's sister, and Alonda Schuler, his widow. Brian passed away last year. So we're kind of in the flux of getting the property turned around. So you probably saw some extra papers within the submittal on that. Ms. Garlick has pretty much represented our project correctly. There's a few things we want to bring up and a few things we'd like to add. I want to say that this project is a local family developing. It's not an out of towner that's flipping. They're building it in memory of Brian to support his family. So there's some special care that we're going into for maintenance and pride of ownership too. This is a long-term hold for the family. So for parking, when we had our neighborhood meeting, we had learned of the concerns of the neighbors that we weren't parking enough on the property. We'd went back, I think at that time we had 11 stalls on the parking, and then we were using street parking for the rest. If you've been down a net, a lot of people use the street for parking, especially across our street or across from our project. So we redesigned, we got 13 stalls on there, which is now we're compliant with the code, with zoning ordinance. The fire hydrant, there are 2 fire hydrants actually quite close to us. But that's kind of a moot point because the fire department wants a new fire hydrant closer to our neighbors. So we will be putting in a new fire hydrant at the direction of the Boise Fire Department. The location, I think we still need to work out because if we put it where it's easy to get to, it's really close to the other fire hydrants. So we'll have to kind of figure that out, but we'll work through that in design review. The traffic on a net is an issue to our neighbors. It is not even technically, but it is a dead end street. It'll go down and loop, but you have to come back. There is no out other than where you came in on Overland. There are very few sidewalks and they're very old sidewalks. So their concerns are kids playing in the street, the traffic being fast, and all those other issues that we get with a small street that is lacking improvements. So this project will be one of the first, or is the first, to include a separated sidewalk, proper street curb and gutters, or modern. So it'll be the first to initiate that. The other idea or concept I want to present to you tonight is our tenants are only going to go in 130 feet minus a little bit to the street. So we won't be adding to the congestion or the speeding from our tenants. We just barely enter into Annette and then we turn off. Those that are going all the way down, I think, is a different problem. And being good neighbors, we want to work with the neighborhood to hopefully help them solve that problem of speeding through there. Ms. Garlick kind of talked about the old growth trees. We are working to save one of the Siberian elms. It's like got a 41-inch diameter. Unfortunately, it kind of seems like it's going to hit right at the curb and gutter. So we have notified ACHD. That's our intent to save the tree. We have not heard back on their ruling of that. And I'd also like to say, I don't think the fire department has looked at it either for aerial access to the property. So those 2 issues we're going to need to work out, and I would propose we just get those worked out in design review, but as our intent to save that tree. It's kind of out of our hands with other agencies now. There's an irrigation canal. Actually, it's an irrigation ditch. It's only about this big that flows on the southern side and then up over to our western neighbor and then back to Overland. It's probably fed from the New York Canal, but we will be maintaining that ditch. Actually, we'll be improving it by tiling that ditch and making sure that our neighbors always have irrigation water. So we'll be working with the neighborhood to maintain that. We also need to improve it where it's on ACHD right away. It's a little funky there in the corner, so we'll be taking care of that at the same time. Concerning the staff comments, we're pretty much in agreement with them. There was one issue that I don't think made it into your packet concerning the trash enclosure and trash collection. We had been working with Randy Wilkins and have a solution that we're going to be using individual carts, and then we'll be hiring Republic to do their carry-out service for us. That way we can get both trash and recycling rather than just one big dumpster on that. The other item that I want to kind of bring up is that we're proposing an 18-foot drive back. Usually it's the fire department that requires a 20-foot drive, but we would like to work that out in design review with the fire department also, because there's no ladder access. The property is too small and you can't set up your apparatus. It's only 30 feet long. So with your approval, we'd like to make that one change to the staff comments. And I've got 3 minutes.
Thank
Let me know
you.
if you have questions.
Great, thank you. Before we get to questions, I will just call to see if we have a representative from the Central Bench Neighborhood Association. Are you a representative of the Neighborhood Association? Great, we'll get to that public testimony after in due time, just in a couple more minutes. Perfect, you're doing great. Just stay tight. Okay, if we don't have a representative, then we'll move to questions from the commission, and I see Commissioner Gillespie all queued up there.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So I have a question for applicant and staff. So I'm looking at packet page 281. It's page 5 of 11 of the report. It deals with the variance along the south side. I believe this variance is required both for the trash enclosure and the service drive. So first of all, let me ask, is that correct?
That is correct. Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that is correct.
Okay, so first question is, since Mr. Trout presented a different theory of how the garbage will make it to the street, do we still have to have a trash enclosure there?
Can I, if I can, the trash enclosure is over there so we can get our required parking, which is a real issue with the neighborhood. If we move it into the site more, we're going to lose parking.
Sorry, you misunderstood my question is, since you're going with individual carts and takeout service, you still have to have a trash enclosure.
We do on this property.
All right, thank you. Next question. So I'm reading your argument that there is in fact a hardship, and I'm a little bit confused. So you're basically saying that the hardship is they have to put in a service drive, and there's so much building that they've applied for that it squeezes it too far down south. But I'm missing, like, a hardship is usually an unusual shape or a big old rock or a cliff or a creek or a tree. That's what the Idaho courts tell us. As I understood Mr. Trout's testimony, the drainage ditch is not a hardship because it doesn't, it's not creating a giant canal easement, right, that cuts down on the land. So I'm just confused again as to why the city, what the hardship is.
Madam Chair, Commissioner. The hardship in this case, when we initially looked at the proposal, the location of the service drive where it takes access off of South Annette was dictated by ACHD. Originally, the site did take access off of Overland Road when it functioned as a office use. With this change in use, ACHD did require that service drive to be located as far from the intersection as possible, pushing that service drive into that side setback on the south. Additionally, that irrigation ditch, we were unsure if that could be tiled or not. So if that remained open, the service drive could not be located over the irrigation ditch.
Well, if I can, the service drive can't be within the setback either. So,
I'm confused because my understanding is the service drive is in the setback and that's the variance
is,
you're
but-
asking for.
yeah, we're asking to, anyway. So ACHD has pushed us far to the south.
Mhm.
The zoning code for an LOD zone has the parking with less restrictive setbacks than the building code. So the code is written in such a way to develop a new urbanism plan on the site with the building front, parking in the back. That's the way you maximize your property. So to maximize the property, we needed to push the building, besides being for ACHD, closing off Overland for us, as far to the north and hard to the east as possible. And then trying to get reasonable units on there with those conditions in the drive pinched us pretty hard. We have pretty small units right now to make this work. We're counting fractions of an inch to get this to fit. So this is our request to let us encroach on that side yard, south side yard setback.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So just from the city's point of view, so what, is it the case that you're basically saying, look, we want these number of units in this position, and if we accept that as a given, we're going to squeeze that south side?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I think the site is constrained based on its corner location. And yes, looking at the density of the site, that's, they're meeting the maximum density. So there are some kind of design requirements here to make this fit.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
But the city acknowledges that this is basically a flat, square piece of ground without any complicating geography or ditches or anything. And essentially, this variance request, this hardship is being created by the number of units the applicant wants to put on it. If the applicant reduced, the number of units, created a little more space at the south end of this, we wouldn't need this.
Well, I think that's the question to the city, maybe that Commissioner Gillespie is
that
asking
correct?
is why wouldn't the city instead choose to reduce the units and not ask for a variance?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, in this case, I think what we looked at was we did foresee a hardship with that irrigation ditch that runs the whole southern property line. And we did see the hardship of, the service drive location being kind of dictated based on that intersection location.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I'll let Commissioner Gillespie rethink how he wants to address it moving forward. In the meantime, I want to talk about something totally different, if I may. And that is a couple of things in our packet that have to do with the tree issue that you mentioned. And so my first question is to staff, and I'm wondering a couple of things, just a very brief overview with respect to the Community Forestry Tree Mitigation Fund as it relates in this case. And I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because when I read this, the value of the other tree to be removed is $14,742. Mitigation costs are calculated at $200 per caliper inch based on local market rates for 2 to 2.5 inch caliper trees at 3 different nurseries to determine the area average. I'm having a hard time interpreting that. I'm not always very smart. So I'm reading that as basically up to $500 because 200 times 2.5 is still 500. So is that accurate? Am I interpreting it correctly that we are saying that the value of this tree to be removed that's in the public realm is $14,740 and we're basically asking for 500? Is that accurate?
No, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, in this case, our forestry folks did provide the comment for the tree mitigation. I think at this current time, they're still developing which trees they can preserve and which ones are going to have to be removed if they can work with ACHD on that curb and gutter issue. As far as the mitigation fee goes, it is calculated based on the forestry's calculation. I believe that that number you're getting to is based on current market rate to replace that tree.
So yes, $500, is that right? then?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I think I might be able to,
Please.
I understand your question.
Yeah.
I think I can dive in here. So I think the Siberian elm in question is a 41-inch caliper tree.
Right.
So, if that were to be removed, it had to be replaced, they would have to come up with 41 caliber inches to replace that tree. So
Okay.
the calculation would be, how many 2-inch trees is that going to take to get to 41 inches?
Which
that
is like
accurate?
13 something
Yeah.
trees.
Okay.
Almost 14.
So it's going to be more than the 500.
Is
Yeah.
is that the accurate summation
Wait, sorry, we're going to just go back to, for the record,
for the record?
Commissioner Danley, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. So is the calculation that was put forth as 41 caliper inches, basically multiplied by our $200 per caliper inch, is that an accurate way of this formula being applied?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would say this is not quite my realm. I would defer
Okay.
to the agency comment letter on how that gets calculated.
Okay, fair enough. Madam Chair, follow.
Commissioner Danley.
Okay, so on page 255 of our application, the landscaped buffer space that's in question, it shows that the potential is there for this one particular tree to remain in place. But the rest of the trees that are in that general area are not. And so my question is, we have a landscape buffer with the potential for no landscape. Because if that tree is removed, then it doesn't show anything being replaced in that space. Is that correct?
Commissioner Danley, through design review, we have presented a landscape plan that shows plants within, it's actually a later landscape plan, but we will be updating it to show the landscape that is required within that parkway, which are some additional trees that'll go in there. So the
Okay.
parkway will be re-landscaped.
Okay, that's what I was missing, and I don't think I saw that in here.
It's
but I
not part of
appreciate
your
it.
packet
Okay.
for PUD.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I actually have a question for staff on that same note. So the Siberian elm in question, I don't see any, and I may have missed it in the packet, I don't see any site-specific condition that should the Siberian elm need to be removed for construction. Is it noted in the plan or in the document here that they will replace it as required per the tree mitigation plan?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, the staff report does have conditions of approval. The conditions do require the applicant to abide by the agency comment letter, which does identify these street trees in question. So if the applicant is able to preserve those trees, we'd ask them to work with forestry on recalculating that mitigation if necessary.
Okay, great. Follow up.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thanks. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
While I've got the floor, sort of, for the applicant, so Mr. Trout, you're asking for this variance to encroach onto the south setback, and you're showing an 18-foot drive aisle, and you've noted that fire, you still have to negotiate. That's a very narrow drive aisle. I think we all are aware of that. So is your intention that this is as we are seeing in our packet now, that this would be the minimum that you would need to encroach into the setback? Or should fire come back and say, no, we need a 20-foot drive aisle? Is your intention then to encroach further into that south setback? Or would you then reevaluate the overall site plan and look to move north?
We would try to move north, just so we don't have to have a conversation about that. But it will be right on the building as presently designed. We would have to consider that, what we might do. That is the same width as the townhomes on 27th and Stewart that are being built. So that is where we picked up our clue, not to hold your hand to the fire, but that's where we picked up the clue that 18 feet could be allowed in the city.
Follow up for
Commissioner Schaefer.
Delaney. I'm just curious, as the site plan shows now, they're meeting the setback requirements on Overland Road. Was there any discussion about maybe encroaching into that setback rather than encroaching to the south. And my question there is kind of relating to the fact that we have neighbors to the south of this property. So was that ever discussed or proposed at all to move north rather than south?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, I don't know that we explicitly discussed about encroaching the structures into the setback along Overland. As designed, the yellow zone does require a larger setback for the parking area. So that's where we get that 10 feet. Typically, it is a 5-foot setback. So it's the zoning that's kind of creating this larger distance of 10 feet to the south, because the south property is a residential zone, while this is a LO zone. So in this case, if the applicant could redesign to make it fit without encroaching into setbacks, that would be preferred. But we did not specifically discuss encroaching north.
Okay, thanks.
If I may add to that, the parking lot itself is only 5 feet. So on the south property line, we could have a 5-foot parking lot, a 10-foot driveway, and then a 10-foot trash enclosure. So we would be doing something like this around through there. The northern setback is 10 feet from property line to the building. We are also taking advantage of the code and expanding our decks 5 feet into that. So physically and visually, we are pretty tight to Overland as it is. Then there's also some high-powered lines right there too that we have to pay attention to. So our desire to move north is probably not a good move.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you. At this point, we'll move to the public testimony. I do have 2 names here on the sign-up sheet. Do you both want to just come up and we'll cue everybody? And if you're online and would like to testify on this item tonight, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, go ahead and pull the microphone down to reach you. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Deanna McMahon, 1691 South Annette Street, Boise, Idaho, 150 yards from the corner. And we have lots of concerns, and I have more and more questions after listening to Mr. Trout. And I wish I had more time to, I'm just new to this. Anyway, our main concern is traffic and parking. So even mathematically, your formula is 1.25 cars for 1 bedroom, 2 cars for a 2-bedroom. That averages out to 20 cars. And they initially had 11 parking lots. Now I think parking slots. Now I think they say they have 15, 13. I don't know if you've been by Annette Street. I don't know if they're going to have a.
Please talk into the mic so we
I
can
don't know if
capture
they're
for
going
the
to have a
record.
4-level parking ramp there. There's no place to park. There's a call center to the. What direction is that? East. And there's just no place to park. And plus that, Delaney forgot to mention our concern about school. There's a school down in South Annette Street close to the dead end that they walk along there frequently. And also, if you turned into Annette Street from Overland, you're going to turn right around into there. Many times the people are slow and you're coming off of Overland. If you don't hit somebody, you're lucky. I appreciate them wanting to build an apartment complex. I appreciate them wanting to have a revenue, but I really think they need to consider making it smaller. It's just pushing all the boundaries. It's pushing safety, it's pushing trees, it's pushing water, it's pushing the parking. And we're going to be really constrained there when we have the parking. There is just no parking. If anybody ever went down Annette Street, there is not 1 slot open on whole Annette Street. We live in that condominium. There's 19 units and we drive in there. But that street is busy and there is no parking. People that live along there use that to park. I'm really, really concerned about the parking. And I really, really wish that they would consider fewer apartments for that small area. And that's, I'm a little nervous. That's mostly what I wanted to, you talked about the tree, which thank you. I'm worried about those children that are walking up and down that street. And And I guess I talked fast and hope I understood. You understood me, and thank you for your time. And I'm sure you don't hear thank yous, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, come on up. Please adjust that mic so we can hear you. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Gilbert Joshansky. I live at 1615 Annette Street. I'm on the south border of the property in question. I'm a wine hobbyist. I purchased the property 35 years ago, and I did it because it is a very historic corner. My property was controlled, all the property around that corner of Federal Way and Overland Road, which is the Oregon Trail, and the Federal Highway, which connected the East Coast and the West Coast by railroad. The railroad goes right behind my property. I have 5 different kinds of grapes all around my property. My grapevines are 165 years old. That irrigation ditch that is in question, that they want a variance for, they want to tile over that, is what feeds my grapes on the whole entire south side of the property. And there's another ditch on the south side of my property that feeds the grapes, on the other side and in the rear. There is also we just heard an issue about a tree that was a shared property border tree. The irrigation ditch goes from along Annette Street to the corner of the southeast corner of the property and goes around a huge maple tree. It's probably 100, I don't know, maybe older. My trees are this big around the catalpa trees. I'm concerned that they're going to tile that over. I don't know what's going to happen with that tree. I understand that the elm tree that they're going to replace is another point of question. And I think they're going to put sidewalks down Annette Street to that tree. I don't know what goes beyond that. But the variance that they seek, I agree with Mr. Gillespie. I don't see the hardship variance there. They're calling it a hardship variance because they want to be able to get a garbage bin or disposal area in the back, which puts that 18 feet from my kitchen door that goes into my property and my bedroom door. So I'm concerned about the smell. I'm concerned about them tiling this. I'm concerned about my 165-year-old grapes getting the water that they need for me to pursue my hobby of making wine. I also have concerns, the safety concerns about the children who come down that street 2 and 3 times a day to go to the city park.
Time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you for hearing me.
Do we have anybody else that would like to testify on this item tonight? Okay, seeing none, then we'll invite the applicant back up for a 5-minute rebuttal. Please start again just with your name so we have it for the record.
Steve Trout Architects, 2504 West Kootenai, 83705. I will start kind of at the end of the conversation there that Gilbert proposed. This is the first, he wasn't at our neighborhood meeting, and I'm sure we would be talking to him shortly anyway. But if he has grapes and we can keep that canal open, my initial design was to keep that canal open until I talked to my civil engineer. So I'm thinking we'll go back to keeping that canal open, keeping those grapes watered for him. The maple tree, we'll work around that somehow. Our intent is not to disturb our neighbors, but to keep their operations intact and whole. So the sidewalk, the tree we're trying to save, the Siberian elm, is not in the parkway. It's like right on the edge of the street in the curb and gutter. The sidewalk will be removed. So the sidewalk is going to dead into Gilbert's property. There isn't anything we can do. The ACHD said this is what it's going to be. We don't want to talk about it. So that's what we've got to do. I'm not sure what we can do for the school. We're only just a little player coming into the project. We're only 130 feet into the street. There's not much we can do. As kind of returning back to the hardship conversation, we had earlier designs of the 12-unit apartments using the curb cut off of Overland. It was an easy design. It fit well. We wouldn't have any variance concerns. Once ACHD denied us either curb cut, but mainly the curb cut on Overland, it pushed us into a corner where we could not easily and of the same scale get the apartments on the project that code would allow. We can park it, we can get 13. We're asking for a few feet of variance on the south side. And it would be nice to be able to use the property as it has been zoned. And that's, I think, our concern with the variance and our position for hardship. Coming off of Overland was an easy design. We could have maximized the site. Coming in south, it has pushed us really hard to get 12 units or maximize the site. I think we'll leave it at that. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Great. Well, at this point, we will close the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
let's get this party started. So for the sake of conversation, for certain, let's make a motion. I move that item number 2, PUD 21-19, a conditional use permit, and CBA 21-27, application for PUD both be approved, along with the terms and conditions in the staff report.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Blanchard. Is there any discussion?
Sure, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley?
I think that what I'm hearing, and I'm sure there'll be some debate on this, which is good, is ultimately this happens once in a while where the relationship between ACHD and the city butt heads, and our code and their code don't always comply, work together. And I think this is evidence in front of us. As in terms of the application as an LOD and trying to do what we're asking them to do, which is pull things closer to the street and put the parking in back behind the units, which I think is commendable, especially given this general area and what's the overview of the overlay of the mixed use. I think that with respect to the children that are walking to school, valid point, but the applicant's being required to put in what isn't there, which is curb gutter sidewalk. So they're actually improving safety as much as they can, and they don't have the ability to go any further. That's something that ACHD would have to do with their community program. With regard to the trees, I think there's a couple question marks, hoping that those kind of things can be resolved. And certainly my hope in design review is that landscape plan is solid, and hearing from the applicant that additional street trees would be added is important. I wish we would get to the discussion of a difference between street trees and shade trees. However, there is a difference, and we keep seeing street trees, which is great, but big canopied shade trees is a different deal, which is thus the question about the value. A lot of things other commissioners have their chance to weigh in, but for those reasons, I will be supportive of the motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
I'm also supportive of the motion, obviously, and Commissioner Danley, I think, covered most of the important points. I will go back to the fact that I think we heard it pretty clearly that staff had stated twice that the irrigation canal in the back really was a piece of this hardship. So I was comfortable with the plan as submitted. So I'm happy to support this and glad to see the development.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
I still haven't decided. I'll just go through what I thought were the key issues, the ones that I'm not, I think can go forward as they are, and the one that I'm still scratching my head about. So with respect to the trees, there's two different groups of trees. One are the trees that are public trees as defined by our code. And with those, the treatment of those is clear. There's mitigation. We can all scratch our head at the spreadsheet that the forestry unit filled out. I've actually bought that book they're using to do that, the 5th edition International Tree Appraisal, and it's really hard to use. So I get it. There's all these weird adjustments and multipliers, and you get to this funny number. But I think in the end, Commissioner Danley, for those trees, the mitigation will be as correct as it can be under our current code. I'm still interested in the Aurelius's tree, which is this, I think, another different tree. And that's interesting too, because it's not a boundary tree. So it's clearly, on the Aurelius's property. And there's a whole bunch of law around like what happens if in construction they damage those roots and the tree hurts or dies. But there's a whole chunk of civil law on that. So it's really not our problem tonight, that particular issue. So for me, so that's the trees. I'm not worried about the parking. I'm not worried about the traffic. I think it's all sort of normal for what we're doing here. I still can't get my head around why we can't just abide by setbacks on a square flat piece of property. We've had testimony that the irrigation ditch is not an issue because it can be covered. And so the irrigation ditch is almost by definition not a source of hardship. So we have a square flat piece of property. ACHD probably correctly, if we all step back and think about it, doesn't want a curb cut on Overland. That's probably the right answer from a public policy point of view. So they want the curb cut on Annette. Okay, fine. But we all knew that going in, and we still couldn't design a site on a square flat piece of ground that honors all the setbacks. And I just don't like that. The reason I don't like it is because in this neighborhood, we're putting in for these folks who live there, this is a lot of density and a lot of building mass. I've been supportive of that, of doing that as long as we stick with the setback and height restrictions, because setback and height restrictions are the way we mitigate the additional density that we're putting in to these areas. So that's why I'm still troubled. I'd like to hear people's thoughts on, why we want to let the setback slide, because if we didn't, it would just the applicant would just have to come back, maybe eliminating a unit or two or squeezing down the size of a building. And I just don't think it should be given that their choice of building dimension, that's what's creating the hardship. It's a flat piece of ground. So that's my thinking on that. I'll let other people weigh in.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I am basically in complete agreement with Milt on this one. I like the project. I like the density. I like the location. In my mind, the PUD, gets my vote for approval. It's the variance I'm hung up on as well. And to be quite honest, I'm struggling a little bit to understand fully what's happening on that south property line. And I think if, maybe if the drawings in our packet could give us a little bit more detail to understand exactly where, that ditch is falling, what's exactly happening on the south side of the neighboring property. I think that would paint a little bit clearer picture for me to understand, maybe be a little more supportive of the variance. So I'm struggling with the variance piece to this application right now. The tree issue, I commend the effort. In my opinion, other than being a mature tree, a Siberian elm is not necessarily a valuable beneficial species. I don't think, you don't see it being planted in any landscape plans that come across these desks, right? So other than the size of that tree, I don't think there's a lot of value in that particular tree. So if they can save it, terrific. If they can't, that's fine. It's in the mitigation plan. And I think the city will get, the value for that tree if it is removed. So again, I'm just kind of struggling with that variance piece, like Milt mentioned.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I think I'm on the same page. The PUD with all the conditions, totally supportive of that. The variance, based on the site plan that I'm looking at, it looks like the drainage ditch is within the easement. So I don't see within that 10-foot buffer, even within this reduced 7-foot buffer. So I don't see a hardship there. The only hardship that I can find is just the requirement to put the access on the lesser street. But this is a requirement that is fairly typical kind of for ACHD. So not, in my mind, an unexpected requirement or something that would be uncommon for a similar property or a similar project. I hate designing from the dais. I don't think it's the great way to go, but we are arguing over, we're seeing 3 feet is really the difference between our thought processes. And I don't know, if that's gonna completely change this building over maybe a 200-foot property plus, or lose a unit, or if it can be picked up somewhere, that's something to kind of study further. But, I think I can't see a hardship either. Just seeing that ditch where it is and knowing that this is a standard condition for ACHD.
Okay. I think I'm going to call for a vote on this. Oh, Commissioner Gillespie.
Madam Chairman, thank you. What I'm wondering is if we would like to ask Mr. Trout and his client if they would enjoy a deferral and had a chance to really think very hard about, can we get within the setbacks? And can we play around with any additional height to add units, that if we have to make that setback and it pushes that, it's only 3 feet. And like I said, I'm sort of on the fence. I really am on this one. It's not an easy call. So I was just wondering if we could call the applicant back and ask them if they would be at least amenable to a deferral, if other folks want to hear what the applicant has to say on that question.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
So 2 points. One, sure, I don't think that that's necessarily a problem for me. I would entertain the option to ask the applicant. I do think that one thing to clarify, if I understood you correctly, the current access and the current curb cut is off of Overland. So what ACHD is doing, and you're absolutely right in that it's not an uncommon request that they are asking and basically requiring that access be removed, in this case, off of an arterial onto a local street. And that's for safety purposes. That's for access management in particular. But what is interesting is that if, there again, here's this relationship, had that request not been made, that requirement not been made, then this decision would be completely within the city of Boise's hands. And ultimately, there wouldn't be even an issue. But because it's out of our hands and it's in another entity's hands, the requirements changing, and thus the site plan is changing, and so on and so forth. So just a bit of a point of clarity on that. But to your point, yeah, if we want to ask the applicant for a deferral, I would support that motion. So legally, in terms of
I am
your call.
I'm tempted to vote on the motion that's on the table, and we can see
where we are.
where we land. Okay, will the clerk please call the vote? Sorry, I'll clarify. The motion on the table is to approve PUD 21-19 and CVA 21-27. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
No.
Schaefer,
No.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Nay.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Stanley.
Aye.
Motion fails.
Aye. So,
3 in favor, 3 opposed.
so
Okay. So
So we had a tie.
yeah, so that it fails. So we can ask the applicant if you would consider a deferral, or would you like us to, or the other option is we will make another motion.
if I may, can I?
Commissioner
entertain
Danley?
Just a thought before you get to that question. We do have two things in front of us, right? We have a
Well, that would be
conditional
good.
use permit, and then we have the variance.
Right.
So with respect to the conditional use permit, if it's something that we could take up individually, it's the variance that seems to be in question, right? And I bring that up because my motion included both,
Right.
as opposed to
yeah,
maybe singular.
That's the other motion I would.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
I mean, I would like to hear from Mr. Trout because I hate designing from the dais, and I know the person on my far right does too, and he's right.
Mhm.
Every time we do that, I get it wrong and it's a big mess. So I guess, I mean, my inclination is still to let the professional go back, work really hard to see what they can do. And if in the end, the applicant wants to bring this very one back again, like I said, it's a close call. It's 3 feet out of 200. And by the way, we heard nobody testify about, privacy or impact on that south property line. So we didn't have anyone stand up really and say, this is a disaster for me and my family because there's a building that's going to be looking in my backyard, which we, frequently get. And the reason is because there's, it's 40 or 50 feet from the wall of that building to the property line that service drive. So in some sense, we don't have anything specifically on the record that says that this encroachment is itself needs mitigating vis-a-vis the people in the south property. Just to
Okay.
think about that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Just back on Commissioner Danley's point of that the access is now currently on Overland, and again, playing were it still the case that we could build off of Overland, we'd probably end up with the worst site plan, because then I'm imagining that we're going to end up with a slot development, right? Where you just have, and so, I mean, I like the fact that we're getting a new urbanism development out of this vis-a-vis 2 buildings stacked, parallel, and you're turning into the center of it and parking,
Okay.
so that's just,
Yeah. Okay.
we're doing
Let's-
what ifs,
We
right?
need a motion though. I would prefer, yes, I would really prefer to have a motion on the table for further discussion. But if there's something imperative, please go ahead, Commissioner Moore.
Just to clarify, there was a comment for public about impacts for that proximity to the property line. It was the trash enclosure proximity to their house.
Thank you. Thank you
Madam
for that
Chairman,
clarification.
I
Commissioner Gillespie,
move that we,
were we going to hear it from, do we want to hear from the applicant on this?
I'd like to move for deferral, but before I do, I'd like to hear.
Fantastic. Mr. Trout, how would you feel about a deferral? And, is it,
I would, excuse me, I'm going to follow Commissioner Daly's kind of lead. I was expecting you would be voting on the PUD and then voting on the variance,
okay,
2 separate motions.
great.
We could move forward with some security on the project with the PUD. We can go back, reconsider the variance, and maybe not even come back. Or we come back with a divert or a new site plan for that. But I also want to say, like Commissioner Gillespie was talking about, I think he was talking about, we're only talking about 3 feet of asphalt And the parking lot is going to be up against the 5-foot. So it's 30 feet of asphalt, 3 feet wide. The cedar fence that is going to wrap the project is the same height as the trash enclosure. So as far as the neighbors,
Okay,
seeing that-
sorry, just to
Sorry,
stop you
sorry.
there.
I got it
So,
off my chest.
yeah, so we are, you would rather us vote. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
Great.
That's a short
Okay,
one.
so now I'm looking for a motion then for this, the items separately.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley,
I move that PUD 21-19, the conditional use permit for the PUD, be approved with the terms and conditions written in the staff report.
great. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. And is there discussion?
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie?
I'll support the motion. I do like the development. I want the gang at the back to understand that. I hope we can get it to fit, but I think it's an appropriate and useful development for the city in this location. Thank you.
Great. Will the clerk please, this is a PUD 21-19 at 1805 West Overland Road, and we have a motion on the table to approve. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Sten,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
All right,
Danley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie?
move that we defer CVA 21-27. It's either defer or deny to our meeting on
August 2nd.
August 2nd.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner
Madam
Moore.
Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie?
So the deferral gives time for the applicant to either withdraw their variance request, come back with the current variance request as is, or, come back. They can withdraw it if they can fit the development in. I'm not sure procedurally if they change the shape or position of the building, if they need to come back on the PUD, but I'll let other people figure it out. So I think the deferral route gives us maximum flexibility to see how the applicant responds now that they have a PUD in hand.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, not Celine.
Oh, I like that. Can we just confirm that the applicant can make August 2nd?
Great.
Thank
They can. Commissioner Schaefer?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just quickly, be clear that I also I appreciate the project. I like the project. I think it looks good. I think this deferral approach, there's just a lot of sort of unknowns right now with what Spire going to require, what's Republic Services need, what's happening with the canal. So I think that, this gives the applicant and the owners time to kind of vet all of those issues and questions. And I agree with Commissioner Gillespie. If you work it out and there's no variance and you can move forward right into design review, terrific. If not, we're here and we'll help you work through it. So I appreciate your patience as we work through this tonight. We got a little muddled along in the process there, but I think we got there. So thank you to everybody.
Okay, I'm actually not going to be supporting the motion. I still am not finding a hardship on this property. I understand that the zoning would allow it, but just because you have the zoning doesn't mean you get to maximize that if you don't have the space for it. Most developers would kill for this kind of plot to develop on, and I think that it can be done. And I think that we've even maybe heard from you tonight that it could probably be done. So I don't see a reason to defer, but yeah, so that's how I'll be voting. But if there's no further discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Sten,
No?
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley?
Take a quick
Oh,
pause.
yes, that's before I could have a chance. We'll be back at 7:30 after a 5-minute break.
Item 5 is next.
Madam Chair, members of the commission.
Okay, we are back. Thank you. We're going to look now at item number 5. This is CUP 21-30 for Pivot North Architecture at 3111 East Barber Valley Drive, a conditional use permit for a parking reduction associated with a proposed athletic facility.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
let the record show, I'm going to recuse myself from this item as my office is handling the civil site and landscape design for the facility.
No wonder you've been so helpful with the trees. Thank you. We'll first start with staff and please go ahead, Mr. Moser.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for parking reduction associated with a proposed athletic training facility on 6.79 acres in the SPO2 zone. The properties adjacent to the east, west, and north of the subject property are comprised of residential, commercial, and office uses. In addition, adjacent properties to the west and north will be developed with commercial and office uses as specified within the specific plan. Adjacent to the south is Marion Williams Park and the Greenbelt along the Boise River. The athletic facility and associated uses are allowed within the Barber Valley specific plan, and design review approval is required with this development. Buildings and parking lots on the campus comply with all the setbacks of the specific plan and are located outside the floodplain and floodway of the Boise River. As noted, the applicant is requesting a parking reduction since they're proposing 62 parking spaces, and 225 spaces are required based on the parking standards of the specific plan. To support the parking reduction, the applicant is proposing 38 bicycle parking spaces on the site, which exceed the required amount by 14. In addition, there is public transit on Park Center Boulevard and a bus stop less than a quarter mile away at the intersection of Barber Valley Drive and Park Center Boulevard. The facility is located adjacent to the Greenbelt. Also, there is additional parking spaces within the surrounding neighborhood that could support the project, which include on-street parking and surplus parking within the surrounding properties. The planning team received a letter from a neighbor expressing concerns with the site design, which basically mean their main concern is that the parking lot is located adjacent to the residential development to the east. However, I would note that the application is for a parking reduction and the use is allowed within the specific plan. Also, a design review application is required of the project, which could address additional landscaping and screening between the parking lot and the residential uses. Therefore, the planning team recommends approval of the conditional use for the parking reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Tanis with Pivot North Architecture. Address is 1101 West Grove Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. So we have a presentation, pulling up. Again, the application is requesting a parking variance for the project, which is the Idaho Outdoor Field House, which is a training and rehab campus for Mission 43 members and CAF Idaho members. We are requesting a parking variance for a reduction on parking due to the unique user group and campus programming, which includes the use of adaptive athletes that will be using the facility. The site plan, so we're located in the Barber Valley specific plan area, SPO2, on Barber Valley Drive in East Boise. The program of the campus is an athletic facility, short-term housing, and a wellness facility for innovative rehab treatments. To accommodate the specific groups, we are providing oversized parking. So specific users being more adaptive athletes, we're trying to design in larger parking spaces to accommodate, ease of getting in and out. We also are considering, or we are doing more interesting parking surface design, as well as providing parking landscape buffering to mitigate any kind of negative impact, visual impacts to the neighborhood. If you can jump to the next slide. So city code requires 249 spaces. What our projected daily demand is only 135 spaces. What we are providing is 162, so that's already over 120% of our daily demand. But in addition, if you start to look at things like on-site shared parking, for example, people staying at the short-term housing will also be using the field house and HVAC or wellness facility. And you also look at the surplus of adjacent parking and available on-street parking. We can go above that 249 spaces. In addition, as was mentioned, we are providing 38 bicycle parking stalls, which is almost half or almost double what was required. And that again is because of the user groups that are going to be likely utilizing alternate modes of transportation and due to the proximity of the green belt and the availability of public transportation within a 5-minute walk. So that concludes what I have to present today.
Thank you.
Stand for any questions.
Great, thank you. First, I will just ask to see if we have a representative from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. I don't think so, but okay, so then with that, we will, do we have any questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley?
the question, can you give me a sense of your general hours of operation as well as the neighbors that you're also considering with respect to the shared parking arrangement?
Yeah, so the typical hours of operation will be around anywhere from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now there'll be people staying in the short-term housing. They will be there throughout the night. Wellness facility is looking at being also almost an 8 to 5 kind of operation system. But and then the neighbors, the adjacent properties within, if you can jump back to the site plan. So we have, and I think Christopher knows a little bit more, but we have the adjacent properties right within that space, right below Barber Valley. There's 19 surplus parking spaces within that alone. But then we're also talking about shared parking within this campus itself. So if you consider the square footage for housing, the wellness facility and field house, combining the shared parking within those because people attending one of these may be attending all three.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you. We'll then move to public comment. So if you are like to testify on this item tonight, please come on up. I did have one name on my list, Ms. Rancic. Check.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is the person who wrote the letter. I'm not sure if they're going to attend.
Okay, great. Okay, and if you're online, would like to testify on this item, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. It would be the applicant's chance for a rebuttal, but there was no opposition that we heard. Are you happy to waive that? Okay, great. Please note that the applicant has waived the rebuttal. And at this point, the item is closed and the commission will render a decision.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 5, CUP 21-30, a conditional use permit for parking reduction be approved with the terms and conditions found in the staff report.
Second.
Great. We have a second from Commissioner Moore. Is there any discussion?
I'll be brief.
Commissioner Danley.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. There's nothing about this I really don't like. I think everything in it is great. Harris Ranch and Barber Valley was built in a way to accommodate active transportation, transit use, the Greenbelt, everything that was identified in our packet and in the presentation. And this particular use is going to be an incredible value and asset, not only to the valley, but also to the city of Boise. And for all of the reasons that you cited, the shared use, the different hours of operation, and clearly the different ways that people can get to and from, even beyond just driving, I have no problems whatsoever with the application.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
And in addition to, I'll say, of course, be supporting the motion. In addition, the extremely detailed kind of analysis of parking requirements is really helpful in kind of assessing the appropriateness and the extent of, the excess parking for code and the appropriateness of this particular number. So for those reasons and the reasons stated in the staff report, I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, great. If there's no further discussion, then will the clerk please call the vote? I'm sorry, we have on the table a motion to approve CUP 21-30 for Pivot North Architecture at 3111 East Barber Valley. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 in favor.
Okay. As we welcome back Commissioner Schaefer, we'll hear our last item tonight, which is item number 6. This is PUD 21-22 for Patra Reed at 4141 West Garnet Street, a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of a single family home and a duplex. We'll first hear from staff. Please again, Mr. Moser.
I'll wait till the screens get shared. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the commission. The applicant is requesting a planned unit development for the construction of a single-family house behind an existing duplex on 0.34 acre parcel. The site is located at 4141 Garnet Street in the R2 zone, and the site is an odd L-shaped parcel. The proposed detached single-family house is located behind the duplex in the back portion of the lot. The surrounding area is primarily comprised of single-family residential and duplexes. Willow Lane Athletic Complex is adjacent to the west on the other side of the Farmers Union Canal, as you can see on the aerial photograph. The applicant is proposing to construct a detached single-family house behind the existing duplex as noted. In summary, the project complies with all the required findings as per the development code, and all the required setbacks and height requirements of the zone are being met. And as you can see here, the house design is configured to fit into an odd-shaped building envelope in the back of the parcel. The planning team did receive a letter of opposition after 5 on Thursday, and as such, it didn't meet the deadline and was not forwarded on to the commission. However, the neighbors' concerns can be summarized into these basic 3 points, and one is emergency access along the driveway, indicating that the driveway isn't large enough to provide it. They had concerns regarding whether or not the property boundary had been surveyed, and I guess there's some property line issues. And they had also concerns with the proposed 5-foot side setback along the north property boundary adjacent to the house. To address these concerns, I would note that the fire department has approved the project. This includes the driveway as proposed. The property line or the property was surveyed to address the property boundary issues. The property was surveyed back in 2004, and the site plan matches the dimensional requirements of that record of survey. Although I will note there is some discrepancy between some of the deeds and the most recent record of survey that was recorded for the site. Finally, the project complies with all the required side setbacks as per the zone, which is a 5-foot setback at this location. That is a side setback for this property. There'll also be a condition of required condition of approval requiring the applicant to install a 6-foot high solid fence along that property boundary as well, which will then also provide screening for the neighbor to the northeast. So in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the plan unit development. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. At this time, we will ask to hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, I'm Petra Reed, and my husband and I were the property owners of 4141 West Garnet. And I think I go briefly into the history. We first met our neighbor, Danielle, when we had just bought our property in 2018. Danielle said that she grew up in the house and that the triangle part of the property in the back had been promised to her father and that she had a promised right to buy it. At the time, the lot was full of decay, old junk, woodshed, high weeds, rotten trees, and a large strip of invasive blackberries. Not to our knowledge was this ever brought up as a fire hazard concern. Since we own the property, we have done a major cleanup. We moved all the junk trees, especially a number of cottonwood trees. We cooperated with a ditch master from the Boise Canal on this, contained many of the weeds, excavated the blackberries, and removed the woodshed. Prior to our PUD application, we familiarized ourselves with the requirements by the fire department to make sure we can meet those requirements and access to build a safe rental unit. Our application has been approved by the fire department. We will widen the driveway, install a sprinkler system in the new home, and meet all the mitigation requirements which are listed in our application documents, posted for public view. Our direct neighbor, I'd like to mention, she did not attend the public meeting, the Zoom meeting, or she did not inform us that she would write this letter, and she saw us many times. The property lines, regarding Danielle's question on the shared property line, I would like to refer her to, I like to refer the commission to the survey on the Ada County record 6470 from 2004, which the planner mentioned. And we used this property layout for our planning and design. For our project, we have to rely on the Ada County information on record, and that is what we have done. And I also would like to request a copy from our neighbor to see what survey she is using to say that she's concerned about the shared property line. So we have no idea what survey she's referring to. Regarding the setbacks, we knew the triangle shape of our property is very unique for a building and rental home. That would fit the lot and is compatible with the adjacent neighbors. To understand the requirements for the triangle, we reached out to the city before even actually starting with a layout. We needed to understand what is the front, the back, and the side, starting any design. The city has standards for this kind of project, for the shape of lot and its required setbacks. And we have fully complied with the city requirements in our layout and design to all sides. It is our goal to create and build a nice, clean and modern rental home in well-maintained landscape. We are incorporating a lot of dry landscape as well, local plants, and to benefit all. And that means the tenants, the neighbors, us, and the city.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Before we ask for questions, I will just see if we have a representative present from the Veterans Park Neighborhood Association. It does not appear as such. So in that case, we will move to questions from the commission for staff or for the applicant. Commissioner Gillespie.
David, with respect to the record of survey question, just to be clear, so the city's legal or essentially position is that the last record of survey recorded with Ada County is the operative one.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, that is correct.
And if I might follow up, my understanding, David, is anytime a record of survey is filed, there's in a sense a procedure where people can contest that record of survey, and that when Ada County completed that process, that's when they recorded on the, as the final record of survey. So there is a procedure by which anybody can contest ROS. I think actually it's at the city level.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I think the record of survey from 2004 was for property line adjustment. It was signed by the planning director at the time. And under our current code, there is a actual application process, and they would have to notify the neighbors of the record of survey. I don't know what the process was in 2004, but under current code, yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So to follow up on the recorder survey, is there a restriction as to kind of the age of the recorder survey, or is it just the latest on file? And it's a question for staff.
Let me just, that's the record survey in question. Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, usually we just go with the most recent one. This is the only one that's on file. I believe the discrepancy is between the deed, the neighbor's deed, and its meets and bounds and the record of survey that's provided here. Normally, the city doesn't get involved in these. It's a property line dispute between neighbors just to figure out what's actually happening.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we will go to public testimony. And if there's anybody, I see one hand up online, but if the other hand would like to be raised to speak on this item, please do so now. And we'll start with Daniel Kiefer. Just give us a second, Daniel, while we switch you over. Okay, Danielle, please unmute and start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Danielle Kiefer, and I live at 4135 West Garnett Street. And I'm basically here today asking that we postpone the moving forward on this property until we can look more at the property line dispute. The property line is not the same as where the fence line currently stands, and it looks like the 2007 record of survey or the 2004, I'm sorry. The 2004 survey shows the property lines as being on the fence lines. I've actually lived in this house since 1979, and I can tell you that in the 90s, there was a shared well between the two properties, and that's why the fence line was built 2 feet over, was to allow for easy servicing of that well. There is no longer a shared well. My husband and I didn't buy this property until 2017. At that point, we discussed and had an agreement with the property owners to move the fence back to the original property line. We had an agreement to do so. However, a few weeks later, my husband was diagnosed with cancer and it got put on the back burner. He then passed last year. And since then, I have taken out the chain link fence in preparation to move the fence over. My main concern is that the driveway, when I move my fence line to the actual property line, the driveway will no longer have 15 feet of access. It's already been moved from 20 to 15. And if it needs to be down to 13, it's just not safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kiefer. Okay, I see last call for testimony on this item. Please virtually raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none, then it would be back to the applicant for rebuttal if you'd like to. Please, again, just state your name for the record and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I have not been aware that there was action before our neighbor's husband passed away, that they were trying to move the fence. That is new for me. I am not aware of it, so I cannot make any statement to it. What I would like to do is ask the neighbor to provide us the survey she is using, and we provide her ours, which is a 2004 on record, and that we then just go ahead and have it independently surveyed and go from there. But what can I do? That is my position.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Okay, with that, the item is closed and it is now before the commission. Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve PUD 21-22 with all the terms and conditions stated in the staff report.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Blanchard. Is there discussion?
Absolutely. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So with regard to the comments, I'm in agreement with everything in the staff report. With regard to the comments, however, emergency access on the driveway width, that's regulated by the fire marshal. And there's a letter from the fire department. They're in agreement with the site plan. The property is surveyed, for staff, we're using the record of survey that's on file. So, if there's a dispute there, that would be aside from this particular application. And the 5-foot setback, this is allowed by the zoning code. There's no kind of request for a variance for that. So with that, I move that we approve it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve PUD 21-22 for Petra Reed at 4141 West Garnet Street. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Sten,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.